Okay, it looks like most people are here. We still might get a couple of stragglers coming in. I'd like to call the Tuesday, May 11th, 2021 meeting of the Nevada Board of Wildlife Commissioners, Mule Deer Enhancement Program, Management Area 11 and 12 Subcommittee to order at 6:08 p.m. I'd like to remind everybody that this is a public meeting being recorded and it will be entered into public record. Tom, would you like to take roll?
Sure. Well, welcome to everybody. I'm acting a little bit more of a, not necessarily a facilitator, but I'm not officially a team member here. So when I'm not talking, I'm going to disappear. But it would probably be beneficial if everybody on the team, if folks could maybe keep their cameras on just while we're talking, make it a little bit more personal. This Zoom meeting is kind of a pain anyway, and I don't know if everybody knows everybody, but if you don't have the ability to use a camera right now, that's fine. And as we do presentations, maybe if you wanted to, you could turn them off. But I will call roll here. And if folks could, we're going to kind of do double duty here. When I call your name, of course, just, raise your hand or say here, present, whatever you got. And then maybe introduce yourself, kind of, who you are, where you live, if you're a local sportsman or maybe a property owner, livestock operator, cab member, just kind of give folks just a little bit of background so we all know who we're talking to. So to get started, Chris Collis.
Yes, I'm here. I own Shelbourne Ranch. We run about 1,000 head of cows between Shelbourne all the way down to Lake Valley Summit. And then also Egan and horse and cattle camp as well.
All right, appreciate it, Chris. Grayson Uwaldi. Don't see him unless he is on the other side. We don't have Grayson yet. Hopefully he can call in. I don't know if he will or not. Janie Albers.
Yes. How are you?
How are you, Janie?
Good, good. I'm just an outdoor enthusiast, wildlife artist, photographer. And we just spend every minute out in the woods.
Good deal. I don't know if I would have let in with just. I think all those things are very, very important. And,
Yeah.
we appreciate the perspective you bring.
Thank you.
Cody McGinney.
Here, I'm the game biologist for Endow. I manage Area 11 and Area 12 for deer.
Martin Burdick. Long time no see, Martin.
Okay, you hear me now?
Yep, we got you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, Martin Burdick. Own a few acres out here by Sacramento Pass towards Baker, Nevada, and do a lot of hunting.
All right. Appreciate it. Mitch McVickers.
Can you hear me, Tom?
Yep, I got you.
Mitch McVickers, live in Ely, chairman of the County Advisory Board for White Pine County, and just a interested sportsman and want to see some better mule deer.
All right, right on. I think we all do. Mariah Collada.
I'm here. I am the habitat biologist here at the Ely Field Office for Department of Wildlife.
All right, and Thomas Brunson. Don't see Thomas on either side yet, so.
He might be at practice. He does coach.
Okay. Yeah, if Grayson or Thomas, either one. call in, we'll see them and plug them in here. So, well, I appreciate it, and I am going to disappear and turn it over to you, Cody.
Agenda item 2 is the approval of the agenda. Due to the approval of the agenda being an action item, we'll take this to public comment prior to action. Persons wishing to comment are invited to raise their virtual hands in the virtual meeting forum. Each person offering public comment during the period will be limited to no more than 3 minutes. Or people may provide public comment via email to ndowgame@ndow.org. Tom, are you seeing any hands being raised?
I do not. We'll give folks a minute in case somebody's going to email us one. All right. I don't see any hands. If we do end up getting a written comment here in the next few minutes, I'll pop on and read it into the record, but otherwise it doesn't look like any public comment at this time.
Is there any comment from the committee? Seeing none, need a motion and a second to approve the agenda.
I'll motion up for you, Cody.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion from Chris Collis and a second from Mitch McVickers to approve the agenda. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Moving on to agenda item 3, this is the presentation for Area 11 and Area 12 mule deer herd status. Sorry, having a little difficulty. Can everybody see that now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we're looking at your PowerPoint software instead of just the presentation.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. So I think most people know where Area 11 and Area 12 are, but for those that don't, sorry, still having difficulties.
It's all right.
I apologize.
You must have watched me on the last one, Cody. It happens.
Yeah.
I'm just glad to see I'm not the only one technology challenged here.
Now can you see it again? The presentation, Builder Enhancement Program, Area 11 and 12 for history and status.
Nope, not yet.
We see you.
You should have an option to, if you hit your share screen, it should come up with a bunch of different windows. Oh, there you go.
Yep.
You're on it.
Okay. Now I think we're good. I'm sure most people know where Area 11 and 12 are, but East Central Nevada, mostly in eastern White Pine County, with a little sliver of Area 12 being in Elko County. And then Area 11's broke up into 2 unit groups, 111 through 113, which is the Shell Creek, Antelope, Turn Mountain, 114, 115.
Hey, Cody, I don't know if it's just me, but you may be having a little trouble with your mic. Can everybody else?
Yes. Yes.
That any better?
Oh, there you go.
Yes.
111 through 113 is composed of the Shell Creek Range, Antelope Range, Turn Mountains. Unit Group 114, 115 is the Snake Range. And Unit 112 is the North Egan Range and the Cherry Creek Range. Here's a graph showing the population estimate going back into the early 1980s of Area 11 and Area 12. So you can see, in the 80s, there was a big population boom of deer, and a started decline. And right here in the 92, 93 winter, really had a decline and just kind of been on a steady decline ever since. Area 12 had a little bit of a boom in the 80s, but it's remained a lot more stable than Area 11 throughout time. And I do need to caution here, Area 11 was split into 2 unit groups, the 111 through 113, 114 to 115 in 2000. So right here. So the population estimate on this graph after 2000 is just adding the population estimates of the 2 unit groups, which isn't quite the same as having a model that's the same population, because your population demographics and harvest interact differently in the model when they're separate, but the trend is still the same. And here's a graph showing from 2000 on. As you can see, it's just been a steady decline for units 111 through 113 and 114 to 115. Area 12, again, has remained a little bit more stable, but we're definitely seeing some decline here the last couple of years. Going into surveys a little bit, we do aerial surveys every year in the spring, and then we try to do postseason surveys 2 out of 4 years. We used to do fall surveys every year, but with the increase in elk populations and increase in elk seasons, we really try to not conduct surveys over deer hunters and bull hunters, and we have a narrow window, November, and December to get the postseason survey data. So it's just not feasible to do it every year with all the areas in eastern Nevada that have deer and elk seasons and just that short time frame. In the fall, we're really trying to get a postseason buck ratio. So we're looking at what the buck ratio is after the hunting season. And so we classify bucks, does, and fawns, and we're looking at the ratios here. Bucks per 100 does per fawns. The buck ratio is important because it allows us to calibrate our population model and make sure everything's tracking. If your buck ratio doesn't line up with your model, it's an indication that things are out of whack. And then we also use our buck ratio in our management guidelines and quota calculations as well. In the spring, we're really looking at fawn recruitment, and these flights occur in February, March, and April, late February. So by this time, most of the bucks have lost their antlers, so we're classifying fawns and adults. And in the spring, ratio is really what drives your population models, and recruitment, whether your population is going to be stable, increasing or decreasing. It really revolves around this spring fawn recruitment. And then our harvest data, since we have mandatory return card data, we get about 95% or better return rate on that. So we do get a lot of good data from hunters. We get our total harvest, or buck harvest, or doe harvest, percent 4 point, days hunted, and so on. And all of this survey data and harvest data directly goes into our models, and we use it in our quota calculations as well. I forgot to mention it too. If we could, we'll probably hold on questions until the end of the presentation. So this map on the left shows our spring surveys from 2015 to 2020, and the higher density of dots definitely represents the higher deer numbers and really the more valuable winter range and spring ranges that are pretty critical for our deer. So, there's the Duck Creek Range and Duck Creek Basin here. That's where the most deer winter in these areas. The East-Shell Bench, you can see this long line of dots through here. Another really important area. The Red Hills up here in kind of the southwest part of 113, they don't look like much, but quite a few deer do winter out in there, especially on good snow years. This east side of the Antelope Range here is another main wintering area. And then moving over into 115, there's the Red Hills down here on the very south, and then kind of that Shoshone Bench gets quite a few deer in the winter as well. And out in Unit 112, there's the Gleason, Bothwick, Smith Valley area, really high deer density, and then kind of coming up the Steptoe Bench up towards the Steptoe Ranch is all pretty valuable habitat. You can see where our deer winter and what is important. So looking at we'll look at survey and harvest data now. And, as I mentioned, we used to fly postseason deer annually. You can see that here in these orange bars that represent postseason buck ratios. And I don't know why there's this gap here in the early 2000s, but since then, you can kind of see the pattern, you know, a couple of years on, a couple of years off. And this is for, you know, 111 through 113. The blue line represents spring fawn ratio. And then down here in the bottom, this table just kind of shows your the average by decades. So we had a little bit higher postseason buck ratio in the 80s, but then it decreased in the 90s. And then since the 90s, we've been on a pretty steady increase in postseason buck ratios. And at the same time, our postseason fawn ratio has been a fairly steady decline. As you can see, in the spring fawn ratio, the real important one that represents recruitment, it's been in a decline, but to a lesser degree than the fawn production in the fall. 111 through 113 mule deer harvest. The blue bars represent buck harvest. The orange bars represent doe harvest, and then the yellow line is percent 4 point in the harvest. So same thing, following our population estimates, going back to the 80s, increased harvest, and then decrease in the early 90s, and overall been on a pretty steady decline, you know, for the last 30 years. Some increases as population goes up a little bit, but overall decline. And you can see that in the table here too. You know, in the 80s, we averaged just over 1,000 bucks harvested, and 2011 to 2020 averaged 332 bucks. Same pattern with doe harvest, and most of the doe harvest now is coming out of the youth harvest. We don't have any doe hunts in this unit other than youth. And similarly to the postseason buck ratio that we saw in the previous slide, the percent 4 point in harvest has been on a fairly steady increase since the 90s. Some fluctuation, but gradual trend uphill. A lot of similar patterns here, you know, 114 to 115. You can see, you know, postseason surveys used to be a lot more common. Then there's that gap, and now it's kind of getting in the pattern of every couple of years. That being said, we have changed our strategy in this unit. We tend to get really low sample size, and the data just isn't very robust. So we haven't surveyed for, I think, 3 years. Our plan is to do postseason surveys every 3 to 4 years, just try to keep some level of monitoring going, but the data just isn't worth flying every year. So we tend to set quotas based on the harvest data and trends that we get. And you know, when you look at the average on the postseason buck ratios by decade, it is on a steady increase. While again, fawn production, fawn recruitment, is just on a steady decline at the same time. Again, you know, big harvest in the 80s, and then just steadily declining the last 30 years. You know, where we're barely even harvesting 100 bucks, you know, in the last decade, a year. So most of the doe harvest in this unit is coming from the Baker Ranch depredation hunt. The youth harvest is really pretty minimal. This unit, generally a handful of does are harvested. And like I say, most of it's coming from the Baker Ranch depredation hunt. And you can also see the steady increase of percent 4 point in the harvest too. That's kind of mimicked the postseason buck ratio. So the unit 121, the survey data, again, if you kind of go back to that population estimate where it doesn't have the fluctuations that area 11 does. There really aren't the fluctuations. It's been a lot more stable through the years. You see the just slight changes in postseason buck ratios. Fawn production has decreased, but fawn recruitment has been fairly stable kind of throughout time. From 35 to 33 to 31 back to 35. That being said, we've had a couple of bad years here lately. This was a really low fawn recruitment. We had another bad year here, and that's definitely driving population down at current time. So, 121 mule deer harvest. Again, big harvest in the 80s, but just like the rest of the population data in 121, it stayed pretty similar for the last 30 years with even a slight increase, 2011 to 2020 on buck harvest. The doe harvest is entirely junior hunters and pretty minimal harvest, as you can see. And unlike area 11, the percent 4 point really hasn't changed or gone up that much. It's really stayed pretty constant. So some of the threats to mule deer are listed here. They're really not in any specific order. We will look at some of them a little bit more in depth. I would like to point out livestock grazing is on the list, but that is by no means a blanket statement that livestock grazing is bad for wildlife. There are some areas that are overutilized, and that is bad for wildlife, but that is not across the board. So you want to make that point clear that we're not saying all livestock grazing is bad. Disease is a little bit of an unknown. We haven't had the opportunity to do a lot of disease monitoring in these areas. We do monitor for CWD annually, but we haven't documented it anywhere in Nevada. We've had quite a few samples, especially out of area 11, had a fair number out of area 12. So we do feel pretty confident that that hasn't made it here yet. There have been some hemorrhagic diseases documented in area 11. None in area 12 to my knowledge. I think we have had some disease in antelope though, so it is probably there. Unfortunately, major events and die-offs with hemorrhagic diseases can be difficult to document. They normally happen late summer. And if you're not out there at that right spot, you can easily miss it. So again, disease is definitely a concern, but we just don't have a lot of information about it this time. Predation is always a hot topic. We do have predators. They do kill deer, but generally a lot of the literature and data doesn't show that predation is a limiting factor on mule deer, especially if you have a robust population. So other impacts kind of include developments, subdivisions, ranchettes. The more of those we get, it's kind of becomes a loss of habitat and fragmentation. There's also some concerns about cutting off migration corridors. I don't know how many are aware, but there's a proposed hydro plant here in the Duck Creek Range right out of Ely. That is smack dab in the middle of some of the most important mule deer range, winter range and summer range. So definitely some current concerns with that related to mule deer. This slide shows annual precipitation for Ely, going back to 1980. The blue bars represent annual precip, while this orange bar represents average by decade. So you can see the 80s were really high overall, then drop into the 90s and early 2000s, and 2010 to 2020 was definitely elevated precipitation, but it sure tapered off at the end too. You can see here, and this bar is 2019. I don't know how many people remember, but we had a pretty good winter in 2018, 2019, and then that spring of 19 was the wettest on record in Ely. The rain just never quit, but overall, we're in several years of really dry conditions. The average precip for Ely from 1990 to 2020 is 9.3 inches, and that's at the Ely Airport. And then just to put it in perspective a little bit of how dry we are right now, after that spring of 2019, it pretty much shut off in June, and the last 23 months, Ely's received 60%, 66% of normal precip, with 2020 being the fourth driest year on record in Ely, receiving 4.99 inches. And so far, 2021 is not off to a real good start. Annual precipitation is definitely important, but the timing of precipitation can be even more important. And that's kind of what this graph is trying to show. So this yellow line is bond recruitment average for area 11 and area 12. If you put all three recruitment lines up there, it just got a little too busy. So I just averaged them to kind of make it look a little better and easier to see. Then the orange represents summer precipitation, so July to September. And the blue represents winter, the following winter precipitation. So these three data points are really chronological, going from summer to winter to the spring fawn ratio and fawn recruitment. So generally what we see is we have elevated summer precipitation and lower winter precipitation. We have higher fawn recruitment. As you can kind of see here, like in the 80s, all this orange is really high summer precip, and then some decent winter, but you see these higher fawn ratios. And the opposite of that is true as well. Generally, if your winter precip is above your preceding or previous summer precip, you're going to have lower fawn recruitment. And a lot of that summer precip allows mule deer to really pack on some weight prior to winter and having better chances of making it through winter. When they go into winter in poor condition, it's a lot harder on them. So you can see some of these years. This is the 92, 93 time frame, and the entire West lost a lot of mule deer. See the big decline. The one time frame that doesn't really match up is here, kind of in the mid 90s.
Sound.
When there was a higher winter precip, but I think a lot of it, deer density's probably got so low after that winter kill that they were just able to respond. But generally, as you go through here, when you see the orange above blue, is when you have elevated fawn recruitment, and when your blue is above orange, you have depressed. And then you do get years, like right here and kind of where we are now, where it's just so dry, neither one of them matter. It's just really tough on mule deer. They're not able to produce fawns and increase their body condition. Sure, most people are aware of some of the wild horse issues that we have around this part of the world and the state. There's 4 wild horse HMAs that kind of overlap with these hunt units. They don't match up exactly, but there's the Triple B, the Maverick Medicine, Antelope Valley, and Antelope HMAs. And so the appropriate management level for the Antelope HMA is 324 horses. The 2020 population estimate is 1,830 horses. The Triple B AML is 518 horses, and the 2020 population estimate is 1,348. So, something NDOW's been kind of showing a lot lately and talking a lot lately is kind of the conversions of wild horses to native wildlife. And so if you look at just the Antelope HMA, there are 1,500 horses over AML in 2020. And when you consider the forage and water that it takes for those horses, it equates to 10,542 mule deer. And we do need to, caution that a little bit. It's not a complete direct comparison because the habitat isn't completely overlapped between where horses are and mule deer. There is differences in diet, things of that nature, but it is important I think it is a good metric to look at. And we also know that horses don't just stay in the HMAs. Pretty much all of 113 has horses, the north end of 114, this north end of Spring Valley, all of Steptoe Valley has horses. So when you think about just this red area in the Antelope HMA, horses are removing biomass of what 10,500 mule deer are. It's pretty significant. And I don't think we have 10,000 mule deer in all of White Pine County at this point. And it's also important to note too that we wouldn't want to just replace those 1,500 horses with 10,000 deer, a combination of deer, antelope, domestic livestock. The horses are overutilizing the range by a lot, but it also shows a little bit of what we could have if horses were under control. A little bit about the fire history in Area 11 and Area 12. You can see all these colored polygons on the map are fires from 1980 to 2020. The impacts from fires can be positive, negative, or both. Sometimes a fire might be negative in the short term, but positive in the long term. So it really does vary. The impacts of a fire, generally the mid to upper elevations have better response. They have deeper soils, more moisture, more native vegetation. So they're less detrimental. Overall, PJ fires are good. There can be some soil erosion issues and cheatgrass invasion. The lower elevations are the most concerning. We generally get a high invasion of cheatgrass and takes a long time for shrubs to come back. Really, cheatgrass is the biggest concern we have with fires at this point. And the most detrimental fires we've had for mule deer in these areas have been the East Shell Bench. Look at the history of that a little bit. So you can see, starting in 1982 to 2020, had a series of fires. And when you look at these polygons, it can be hard to see, but there's a lot of overlap in fires. So, some areas have burned 3 or 4 times. There's a little fire in there. There's like 3 or 4 fires right here. This is 2 fires. There's another little one in there. And there's been numerous attempts with BLM and MDEP to rehab these areas, and we've had little success. Anybody who's been out there sees the lack of shrubs. It's just all grass, which can be good at times, but when you lose that shrub component, you really lose the winter value from forage and thermal cover. And this area isn't important for just mule deer, it's important for elk, antelope, sage grouse, a variety of species. And it's pretty narrow in size. And when you look at some of these acres, they don't compare to some of the fires north of I-80 in Nevada, where they're burning hundreds of thousands of acres, but they are very detrimental to these animals and have a lot of impact to them. All these colored dots represent various years of survey. Most of the deer on hard winters are down here, below Black Mountain, where there's still sage. This really isn't much up further north. This area is definitely a concern, and like I say, we've spent a lot of time and effort trying to rehab it. Just haven't had a lot of luck. Plants senescence is another issue and concern we have. It's basically the aging and deterioration of plants. And when you look at a lot of our rangelands across Nevada, but definitely White Pine County, the shrubs are old. They're 60, 80, 100 years old. They haven't had a lot of disturbance. And at this point, their nutritional value and digestibility is decreasing. And so it can be frustrating. You can look at an area that looks like good habitat and have all the right species for mule deer, but the quality of it can be fairly poor. And then treatment of these areas can be pretty risky. You might not get the natives back. You might not get response from some of the browse species, like sagebrush and berry brush and serviceberry. You might open it up to more non-natives invading too. So don't really have a great answer on how to work in these areas, but something we need to try and figure out. PJ encroachment is another big issue in this part of the world. So you can see we got Illapah up here in 1954 to 2011. Illapah is in Area 13, so I'm sure most people know it's not in Area 11 and 12, but it's very close. And this is just an aerial photo that I have on file, so I was able to scan it and kind of compare it to Google Earth imagery for 2011, and look at some of the PJ encroachment and how that's creating the loss of habitats. We'll zoom in on these slides a little bit. So if you look, you got this kind of main road here. You can see it in this Google Earth map. And it is a little hard to tell on here, but you can look out here and you just see a few, dark dots coming through here, some through here. And those are the trees. Most of this is open mountain brush zones. And same with kind of over here through this side of the road and on this bend here. You just don't see a lot of dark. You don't see a lot of trees. You come over in 2011 and you look at all the dark and the density of dark trees through here. And same thing over on this right side of the road. You can even look, this is Buster Ridge here. You look off the west side of it, just very few trees in 1954. You can start to see all these pockets and scattered trees coming up these ridges through here. So just kind of everybody knows PJ encroachment's bad, but when you actually look back at some old imagery and compare it to now, you can really see what it's like. And here's one more picture. So you got the Old Pot Reservoir down here in the lower right. And one area to really kind of key in on is looking at this open basin right up here. And then here it is in 2011. You look at this tree band coming across the top, encroachment in the bottom of it, and then just really this entire face here is very dominated by PJ. You just look out this side here too and see it. Then this is kind of the west side of Mormon Ridge, and same thing with looking at Buster Mountain. You can look at all these fingers coming down and you just see the low tree density and you almost count the trees, and then you come into here and just look at all the trees and the change in 60 years. It is worth pointing out that if we had a 2021 image of these, it would look a lot different. The BLM and Forest Service have both done some treatments in these areas, so it has improved to some degree. We're pretty lucky in Ely. We've got a BLM district and a Forest Service district that are very proactive in habitat projects. And MDEP works really well with them too. We This map shows habitat treatments in probably the last 15-20 years. The green is Forest Service treatments, and then the other colors represent BLM treatments and different treatment types, such as hand thinning, mastication, chaining. And so there really has been quite a bit done, especially in certain areas, and it's more happening all the time. One area that NDOW's works pretty well with the BLM is on seeding. The BLM will conduct mastications or chainings, and then NDOW buy the seed. We partner with that. We've had some really good responses on these treatments. You get that seed down and get some timely precip, you can definitely benefit the landscape. So future habitat projects that NDOW has planned specifically are here in the blue. These should be happening either this summer or next summer. A lot of them we have funds secured already. So there's kind of this Cooper bench down here from like Majors Junction up to Cooper Canyon, and then a bunch up in Cooper Canyon on Forest and private. Over here on the north end of the Great Basin National Park, we have some aspen work going on, going in and thinning firs. firs and other conifers out of aspen to try to regenerate some aspen. We have a bunch of work planned up in the Kern Mountains on private land here. And then got a project here in Egan Basin that mostly sage grouse oriented, but it will benefit mule deer. And then this other blue polygon here is the Flint Spring area. We're gonna do a bunch of tree cutting in there. You know, as I mentioned, we're lucky here in Ely because we got a very proactive BLM and Forest Service district, and they're constantly clearing NEPA to do work in more areas. And so the Kerns are going to have more work done from the BLM. The Egan Johnson Basin area is going to have more work done. We're likely going to continue to work with them. We've started conversations with the BLM to work here in Smith Valley out by the prison. And some of the, well, directly across from the prison on that bench up into Lothwick and Gleason, and then coming around here on Heiser Mountain. Hopefully that'll happen in the next couple of years. BLM started doing work this winter in Duck Creek Basin. I'm sure they'll do some work in there at some point. The South Spring Valley, Hamlin Valley EA was signed this winter, so that opens up a lot of the south end of 115 and up through the kind of Shoshone Bench, the west side of 115. I have some pretty big hopes doing some treatments in there. We have started conversations with the Elko BLM to work in the Elko portion of 112 or 121. Then we've also had some conversations with the U.S. Forest Service to try and increase prescribed fire in certain areas. We're really targeting upper elevations, north slopes that have more precip, better soils, better native components, and try to increase the amount of forage and break up some of that old shrub cover that I was talking about with the plant senescence and whatnot. So there's a lot going on. We definitely hope to keep working in the habitat arena and just keep plugging away. We also have a water development package with the Ely BLM district that was signed 2 years ago, I believe. It includes 9 new guzzlers and 11 rebuilds to increase water capacity. So hopefully we can have more water in some of these dry years. Some of those guzzlers are not mule deer focused and in other areas of area 22, but we do plan on rebuilding all 3 guzzlers on the north end of Mount Moriah, increased capacity. We have built 1 new guzzler in the Antelope Range and plan to rebuild the 2 existing guzzlers in the Antelope Range as well to increase capacity. This is a picture in this last winter in Egan Johnson Basin. So down here, it almost looks like shrubs, but these are freshly cut pinions and junipers through this area. And then this yellow is a mastication that the BLM had done. And you can look across the valley, you can see all these cuttings, mastications along this bench as well. And if you look way out here in the distance, you see some open areas, and that's the old 9-mile chaining. And Endow, one of Endow's projects was doing maintenance on that this past summer and fall. We had a contract crew go in and cut all the trees to kind of maintain that more open shrub habitat. With that, we'll go to questions.
might be easiest if folks want to, on the bottom of your Zoom meeting screen there, raise your little virtual hand if you have a question or something, and we'll kind of try to keep track. You must have done a really thorough job, Cody, because I haven't seen a hand yet.
Yeah, I went too quick.
I got a question. Can you hear me, Cody?
Yep, go ahead.
So on these future guzzlers, I don't have a problem with the guzzlers, but like we've talked in the past, is this a good time to address the possible solar pumps or alternative water, since we are so dry all the time? I mean, maybe we can get the department to start drawing up some language for agreements,
I think it's something to consider.
if that's something we're all interested in, I guess.
It is something to consider. We just, at this point, we haven't developed an agreement and figured out how to do it, with water rights and costs and all that, but I don't think anything's off the table.
Okay, just something for everybody to consider. Thank you.
Well, I guess if there's no more questions, y'all can think about it a little bit. I appreciate that, Cody. That was a really good presentation. There's a lot of stuff to digest there. Sometimes it seems a little overwhelming, but part of this process hopefully is we'll get a bunch more perspectives and hopefully kind of show folks that the agencies in Dow, BLM, Forest haven't really been sitting around idle. There's been a lot of work going on out there. And hopefully with some new perspectives, maybe we can find some greater capacity to do some of the same things, and maybe some ideas, different ideas to pursue that could maybe help this stuff. What I'm going to do real quick, Cody's was the meat and potatoes here. I'm sure folks have a question about how the rest of this process is going to go, and I'm going to do a quick rundown on kind of what it looks like moving forward here, and then we'll do a quick Q&A after that, and then cut folks loose after some public comment. But let me share my screen, and we'll kind of talk about what this is going to look like maybe going forward here. Bear with me as well. And this, I'm going to share a screen here, but it's not, well, I think I'm going to share a screen. Maybe Cody rubbed off on me. Let me try this again. There we go. Is that a full screen view for all y'all?
Yes.
Okay. And I realize this says Area 7 on it, but let me stop my video here. We have teams across the whole state, and each team's going to have, its own set of forms that everybody's going to have. So we'll just run with Area 7 for now. I guess, first of all, I know I spoke to most of when we were developing these teams, and we were, out there kind of trying to drum up some interest and contact some folks that we know have a real interest in mule deer and just the habitat out there, and could maybe bring some pretty important perspectives to the table. So I appreciate all of you, all of your interest and your willingness to participate in this effort. Hopefully we can accomplish some pretty great things, and, together, maybe, best case scenario, man, we'd love to have some more mule deer out there. Maybe at least kind of stop the bleeding and make that habitat out there whatever other problems we have, mitigate those as much as possible. So anyway, tonight's meeting was, is more of a kickoff meeting, kind of setting the stage. Cody's presentation, just talking about where the deer herd has been in White Pine County, where it's at, some of the major challenges from our perspective, and from many others. But starting here in future meetings, it's going to be a lot more collaboration. It's going to be actually getting some work done. And hopefully now that this COVID thing maybe is winded down a little bit, we'll have some opportunities to even get out in the field and do some field trips and look at specific issues that we may be identifying as a group. And, it'll be a little better than a Zoom meeting or sitting in a conference room. But the intent of this effort, is just like I mentioned, to use a collaborative process that includes folks from a bunch of different backgrounds, from sportsmen to, just outdoor enthusiasts to livestock operators, landowners, all of that. And while we're talking about that, our intention is to have participation from the federal land management agencies and maybe some other agencies. We're in the process of doing that at a statewide level. There's some policies and procedures they have to abide by that sometimes it's a little bit challenging to get their participation on some of these local type working groups, but we're in the process of developing a charter, which they need to have, and some of that. So we're not doing this without them. We're trying to catch up with those folks, but they will be an important part of this. And whether they're voting members of the team or just more there for informational purposes or, just learning and listening and participating, we'll see how that looks. So these forms here, you'll see the one on the left. I'm hoping it's on your left, the Mule Deer limiting factor ranking sheet. This will be some of the first stuff we tackle as a team. And when I say we, not me, I'm not a member of the team, but everybody that is on that team, including Mariah and Cody from the department, and then Mitch from the cabs, and then everybody else from the community. What we're looking for is for folks to go through these worksheets, and based on your experience, your perspective, what kind of go through here and rank some of these limiting factors. And we don't expect you to do this in a vacuum. We're not going to shut Mitch in a closet and say, you got to do this on your own. You can't talk to anybody. We're looking for folks to, reach out to your peers, reach out to other folks and talk to them and some of that. And what this process should do is folks will go through independently, having collaborated with their peers, and rank some of these as far as Area 11 and 121, and rate these things on a scale of 0 to 5. So for the first two examples, I guess, in Area 11, somebody might say, man, wildland fire, that's maybe a 3 as far as a limiting factor. But man, feral horses, I'm going to say feral, although it says wild. It's because I'm contrary, and somebody may say, man, feral horses are a 4. And so after everybody on the team ranks these, we'll get averages, of course, and then that'll play out and give the groups basically rankings after everything's averaged, and we'll be able to kind of sort out the top however many limiting factors. Now there's stuff on here, as everybody will probably notice, like climate and weather. That's a big one. Even feral horses, maybe. There's some things on here that our ability to address them is going to be pretty limited. But we do still think that it's valuable to identify those. We don't want to just ignore them, and we want to have that on the record. So you know, even if, say, climate and weather came out to be the top limiting factor, well, you know, probably step down to the next one unless somebody can concede clouds, which I remember when we first initiated some of the sage grouse plans on the western side of the state, there were folks seriously considering seeding clouds over there. So you never know. Anyway, once the team has its top limiting factors ranked, then this form on the right will come into play. And again, this form, but neither one of these forms is a comprehensive list. Folks may come up with stuff that are not on these forms, and they're just as legitimate. We just, you know, put these on there, everything from predation to roadkill to wildland fire, but there may be other ones the group comes up with. And then on the right there is a form with some potential ways to address some of these limiting factors. So if the team decides wildfire and invasives and lack of diversity are the two main limiting factors, there's some ideas here for projects of how that might be addressed. So just kind of going through the strategies. Now, once the team ranks their factors, maybe identifies some projects by using this needs assessment, the top few project proposals will be kicked to the statewide oversight committee. And they're going to be getting those project proposals from every group in the state. And there's a team for just, you know, every management area unit group out there with mule deer across the state. They all have teams. So they're going to have their hands full getting a bunch of priority projects from the teams. Then it'll be up to them to prioritize, you know, on an annual basis or what have you, which ones of those projects statewide are the priority. And this is one of those things we want to make sure that good things are doing across or being done across the landscape. And there may be times where, you know, I don't know, maybe in area 6, we all know lightning strikes and fire hate area 6 mule deer. You know, it would be real easy for an area like that to get every project, everything. But we're going to try to avoid that. And I think what the oversight committee is going to try to do is kind of spread some of that wealth across the landscape and make sure everybody gets a piece of the pie. So don't feel like, you know, area 11 may not, you know, get something if everybody's trumping them. But there's a number of things that can potentially influence those priorities statewide. And we're going to come up with projects that great ideas, but they're brand new, just starting. They're just a seed and they may not get instituted right away. But if there's projects that maybe have multiple partners, if a team can get buy-in from federal land management agencies, even counties or NGOs, that could bump up the prioritization. There may be some projects that already have NEPA either done or being done. That might scoot it up the priority list a little bit. If there's some funding in place already, that's a big one. So there's a lot of things that can influence those priorities, but we don't want folks to hold themselves to that. Just because a project doesn't have NEPA going yet, doesn't have any funding, whatever, doesn't mean it's important. And it may take a few years, several years to get that on the ground, but they're valuable and we need to hear about them. So kind of in a nutshell, that's going to be the process. This is not a short-term deal. At a minimum, we'll probably be asking for some project proposals and stuff, maybe annually, and kind of go through these, and these teams can meet as often as they want. But I feel like the next handful of meetings are going to be real important, and it's going to be kind of getting everybody's perspectives on what they feel like some of these limiting factors are and where we can really put our resources to trying to do something for mule deer here. So with that, if there's any questions regarding that boring stuff, holler at me, and let's see, I'll stop sharing that. And that's really about it. Oh, and the next meetings, that's kind of going to be up to the group here. Cody will be reaching out probably before too long to get the team's feelings on, hey, do we want to kick this off with a meeting and talk about these limiting factors? Do we want to go out and on a field trip and look at some things first? But that'll be coming up before too long, several weeks. We don't want to wait too long to get this process started. The sooner the better. So anyway, any questions about any of that or anything anybody wants to add? I know we've got some attendees on the other side here that I don't know if anybody wants to ask any questions or provide any other information, but I'll look for hands in the meantime. So any questions, fire away. All right, Cody, I bored them to death too. So. All right.
Thomas is on here. Tom and Cody
Oh.
for the group.
Shoot, yeah, I
That's his cell phone.
appreciate you. I appreciate you pointing that out. I was going to mention that. I saw his name over there and we got him to pop on. So Thomas, if you could maybe unmute your phone there. A little bit of a round robin, kind of introducing ourselves and what we do and what our interest is in Mule there at the beginning of the deal. And if you wouldn't mind, maybe pop on and introduce yourself to the group.
Let's go by. Hey guys.
How you doing, Thomas? Appreciate the participation.
Sorry, I missed the instructions on how to unmute myself, so I've been listening, but can you hear me at all?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, you mind?
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how all this stuff works, but I have been listening the whole time. Didn't get to see the slides, but yeah, everything sounds good. I'm Thomas Brunson. I've run an outfitting business here, in these two units for 22 years or so. So excited to be on here and be able to help out a little.
Yeah, we appreciate that. And Thomas brings up a good point. This is something that you can talk about, folks in the community, whoever. I mean, if you got an Aunt Sally in Mississippi, you can talk to her about it. And you can go on to the Department of Wildlife website and go to the public meetings section, go to the commission committees. There will be a Mule Deer Enhancement Program committee for the commission. And then on that, there's the subcommittee links, and you can get on there and view these PowerPoint presentations and recordings of these meetings.
Perfect.
So yeah, you can, just anybody and everybody you can think of out there, livestock operators, sportsmen, miners, prison guards, you name it. Anybody with an interest in mule deer, I would encourage you to point them that direction, have them look at these presentations, and if they want to listen to the narrative, I think that adds a ton. You can just look at the PowerPoint, but I think watching that recording and having the narrative from the biologist is pretty important. So that'll be available for everybody. And now, Cody, I will leave it to you. I'm gonna disappear again.
So the agenda item number 4, public comment, persons wishing to comment, invited to raise their virtual hands in virtual meeting forum. Each person offering public comment during this period will be limited no more than 3 minutes. Or people can provide public written comment via email to endowgame@endow.org.
So Cody, this is Chris Collis. That's really not a public comment, more of a question. Would it be possible to get some of those maps and PowerPoint graphs and stuff you showed so, you know, a guy can study and be a little more educated for the next meeting?
Yeah, I can make those public. Or not public, we get those to you guys. I know it's a lot of information to absorb all at once. I've been working on them for off and on for a couple of months, and I look at that stuff all the time, so. Probably
Yeah.
comes to me a
And
little
then
bit more easier than you guys.
My next question is, you showed the map of the mule deer winter habitat and stuff. And that was for this past winter, right? It didn't show histories or anything. It was just for 2021 winter.
No, that was, all those dots, the different colors represented, 2015 to 2020.
Different years.
For different years.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
All right, I don't see any other hands, and we haven't received anything on the emails.
Okay, well.
Thomas is asked, or Martin's asking about raising the hand button.
Hey, hop on, Martin. You don't have to raise your hand.
Yeah, okay. I didn't know how that all works, so I text Mitch. But no, I'm very interested in those maps too that Cody has. I'd like to look at those some more too.
Yeah, I'll send an email out to everybody with a copy of the presentation.
And you'll have the updated breakdown as far as the units like Tom had for areas 6 and 7.
So Mitch, are you talking about the limiting factor sheet and all that?
Correct. Yeah, it breaks it down on the factors and what we're going to evaluate.
Yeah, I believe, don't quote me on this because unfortunately I missed the committee meeting. I didn't get to watch all of it. I'm not sure whether those forms have been finalized and approved by the committee yet, the Oversight Committee. But we'll have those for Area 11 and 121 by the next meeting for sure. And then be able to talk about those and what have you. But you can get a general idea by watching that, a recording of this presentation on our website and then just zipping through it to that if you want.
Right.
As soon as they're officially approved, and by the next meeting, we'll have those for everybody to start digesting.
Thank you.
Thomas, do you have a question?
I have a stupid question. Is it something the department could even, I don't even know what the possibility of it is, but I know the habitat and like that whole Bothwick area is kind of pressed because there's such a doe fawn problem down there. Is a trap relocation type project even feasible to like bring some of that doe herd that's on the south end that's kind of overpopulated and put them on the north end?
Generally, we don't really consider trap and transplant with mule deer. Historically, it hasn't been very successful. And then with disease issues, we pretty much don't do it, or potential disease issues at this point. We really don't trap and transplant.
Okay, yeah, I just had a few people that I talked to about it mention it, and I thought it'd be worth throwing out there and see if it was something that's even possible.
I would say nothing's off the table initially, but yeah, what Cody said, is accurate. We've had mixed, not even really mixed success, pretty poor success. Utah tried it for a long time, trapping town deer and moving them. And they finally quit doing that due to CWD concerns and the fact that a lot of times it's the best thing for the deer. In the case of like these kind of units, if you just moved them to the north end of a
Yeah, they
unit,
probably wouldn't even stay. Yeah,
right
for sure.
back.
Mhm.
And then with CWD concerns, that's pretty tough as well. But yeah, nothing's off the table at this point. There's no dumb ideas, Thomas.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
There any other comments?
Did any of your figures, Cody, did it have anything? Did you have any? I didn't get to see any of the stuff because I'm just on my phone. But as far as like mountain lion harvest in 121, and like, is there any way to see like a breakdown of location and how many have been killed for 111? But 111, 113 is not doing great either. But 121 is definitely. I think it's really like it's really, really bad. And I just think the mountain lions have to play some kind of a role in there. And I didn't know if there's any way to plot like, the last 5 years kills and see how many lions have even come out of there. Just for a comparison.
I don't have that information up to date, but I think that's definitely something we can look into and get for a later meeting.
Okay.
Probably all the units, huh?
I think it would be viable. I think it would be good information for all the units for sure.
And Cody, I guess while we're starting to look at predators, I mean, I hate to ask this, but you hear from ADC and stuff how I guess Endell spent a bunch of money on the diamonds and stuff flying and killed over 1,500 coyotes, and they're claiming the deer population came back by 55%. I know you've done some in Duck Creek. I was wondering if you've seen any positive results from that.
We have removed a lot of coyotes from the diamonds, but I don't think the population's responded, especially to that level.
Okay.
We have been contracting with them last couple of years in Area 11, mostly focused on antelope spawning ranges, but at this point we haven't seen any positive benefit in antelope boarding here.
Okay.
Thomas, or you got your hand up again?
Nope, I don't.
Any other questions or comments, thoughts?
I don't have anything at the moment. I'm sure I'll think of some, but I'll have a whole list ready for next meeting.
Perfect. Well, if we don't have any further comments, I'll move to adjourn the meeting at 6:32 p.m. I thank everybody for participating and being here.
Thanks, Cody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks you guys. That was good.
You too.